what is one thing you would say to the audience if they're struggling just in general in life, they're not happy with who they are?
One thing that changed everything with me is
Welcome to the All In Podcast, where we talk to businessmen who are husbands and fathers. We talk about faith, family, fitness, and finance, all areas of life and how they all affect each other. So stay tuned for today's episode.
hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Jimmy Lee. I'm actually working with the Elliot Army here with Andy Elliot down in Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm from Michigan originally, from West Michigan. I've been traveling all over the past few years, and now we're down here in beautiful Arizona.
So, Jimmy, if someone is just tuning in, why should they listen to your story?
I've had a major transformation, over the years. Obviously, my parents came from Vietnam early on. They came here after the war, not knowing the language, not understanding, the culture. Watching them just work really hard. Really wanted me to be that bloodline breaker. It was my kind of job just to be able to kind of find the right mentorship, the right people in my life to help take me from where I was. We grew up, very poor, very scarcity mindset, to be able to, be able to have so much abundance in my life. So
That is awesome. So, do you have any children? Are you married?
yeah, I'm married to my beautiful wife, Deborah. We have a little 7 month old little long-haired Chihuahua named Coco. But we also have four kids back in West Michigan. So they're all grown, and they all have their spouses and get married and doing all the fun stuff. So
Awesome. So I met Jimmy actually at the Dragon's Lair in Vegas at Funnel Hacking Live just a couple weeks ago. And if you met him today, you would not recognize him from 2 years ago. And we might pop up a picture here on the screen and post of what he looked like a couple years ago. So what gets a man from where you were to the guy you are today?
it was about 2 years ago. 2 years ago, when I was a business owner in Northern California. We were doing commercial solar. So we were running a pretty busy business. We were doing well. But we were just better than most, right? When it comes to our relationship. My fitness was terrible. Just like the way I was feeling about myself. And then I came across a seminar with Andy Elliott, and Andy just gave me a whole new perspective. Really just helping me to understand that I was built for more, understand that I wasn't playing to my fullest potential, understand that I had the wrong people around me. And once I started making some changes, and eating healthier, started working out consistently, just having the right people around me, making sure I was always listening and staying plugged into just a great content. It really changed my mindset. And then over the course of 14 months, I was able to transform not only my mental capacity, and my physical health. I lost 65 pounds during that time, and also just helped to restore my marriage. So at the time, I like really didn't realize how broken I was until I started going on this journey. And then just along the journey, man, I've been just so enlightened. There's so many different things I was not doing, and people around me weren't seeing me as a leader. They weren't seeing me, at my highest potential. And it's been just life changing. Just taking those steps of being more disciplined.
So I think you just nailed it right there, but how do you stay on the path? Because a lot of men, I'm sure they're listening to this, they've gotten a high. Maybe they went to a conference, they heard a thing, and they went home and like, I'm going to work out, I'm going to love my wife, I'm going to take her on dates, I'm going to connect with the kids, and maybe they did great for a week or two, and then it just fizzles away, and they fall right back into their old habits and patterns. What makes the difference between you 2 years later, you're still plugged in, still growing, expanding, versus the man who falls back a week or two after the hype?
We all need some sort of a brotherhood, or like a community of people that we love, that we trust, that will hold us accountable. because I know on my own, I'm like super lazy. I probably, won't do the extra, work when it comes to the extra reps or show up sometimes. But if I have somebody expecting me to be at the gym or somebody that's actually holding me accountable or like, having a team, because I've always been successful having a team around me. So in high school, we were a state championship football team. I was part of the team. And I would never want to let my team down. And then in business, we were part of championship teams. We broke records in my different eras throughout life. And I realized as a business owner, I was a solopreneur. It was our business, it was my wife and I. Like at the time, there was no really team, so there was nobody really pushing us or encouraging us to do more. There was no boss because it was just us, and so we just
Yep.
got really comfortable. And then the comfort is the god of this generation, right? It's the whole Netflix and chill. It's the whole getting DoorDash. It's the whole like just being comfortable. And if you're doing the easy stuff now, which you're not running towards pressure, then your life will be hard. From your health. If you're not working at your relationships now, doing the hard stuff, having the hard conversations now, later on, your like relationship would be very hard, right? So I've just adapted to doing the hard stuff now. If you do the hard stuff now, you actually lift the heavy weights now, it gets easier.
That's gold right there. You said something at the beginning, though, that I want to lean into. You said, without a team around me, I would probably be lazy and wouldn't stick with it. Now, I think there's a myth that people think that the feeling leads. They want to go work out. They want to go have the hard conversation. Sometimes you just create a life where it forces you to do the action and then the emotions follow. Would you agree with that? You don't always feel like showing up, but you create a life where you have to show up and then the emotions can follow that.
It's always going to be hard trying to, wake up a little bit earlier, trying to squeeze in a workout before work, trying to do the work. It's always going to be hard starting. It's like a merry-go-round, at the playground. When you're trying to like push that merry-go-round, imagine having a whole football team. It's like a lot of weight on there. It's trying to create momentum in your life. So when you start getting that, when you start digging in, you start pushing that little merry-go-round, all of a sudden like it starts going. Now all of a sudden you got momentum. It's the same way with showing up at the gym. When you show up early, it's always gonna be hard at first. The first couple of days you'll be sore all over, and those are the times that most people quit. But if you keep on pushing through, it gets easier. And then all of a sudden you start feeling more proud about yourself. You start seeing some results. You start feeling a little bit better, and that's where like momentum happens.
I often use the gym as an analogy to people when I'm talking about just the stress of life across all domains. And if you go into the gym and you see those weights and people lifting these hunks of metal and they're grunting and they're sweating and you're like, that's awful. Why would I do that? That looks miserable. And you leave. You don't resist the weights. But if you change your story about the weights and you see those weights as your friend, and I'm talking about back in life, the stresses of owning a business or being a father or a husband, like it's hard. But if you go and you rep those weights, it'll make you stronger. You got to see those weights, the stress in life, as your friend, so you don't run away. You actually lean into it, just like you're saying, because that's where the growth happens. There's no growth without that resistance. So the stress in your life is a gift if you lean in.
It's also before too. I've always was always trying to compete against other people, right? You would see somebody else that was a lot further in their fitness career, so maybe they're actually
Mhm.
pushing a lot more weight, right? So at first you're like trying to maybe keep up to that, but it's not that person that is your enemy. It's actually the person in the mirror, right? You have to compete against yourself. If you're focused on competing against yourself, trying to get 1% better every single day, that's where it is.
Yeah. So you're part of a pretty badass team. If anybody doesn't know what the Elliot Army is, you can just look them up anywhere on social media, and you'll get bombarded, and forever you'll get bombarded with their stuff because they're everywhere. But do you ever, being surrounded by men and women that are committed like that, do you ever feel imposter syndrome? Like, how did I end up here? Do I really belong here? You know, these other guys are XYZ, or have you grown into your identity there as a critical component of the Elliot Army team?
I mean, all of us have different skill sets, right? God has blessed all of us with different talents, and combined, we're actually a big force. But if it's just us, by ourselves, we're not as powerful. So we understand that we all have different gifts and different talents. And if I'm sitting here trying to compare against somebody else who's been doing things a lot longer, or maybe they're skilled somewhere else, that's where the enemy wants you to kind of live in. But if you actually focus on what you're good at and just keep on, working hard at it, you'll actually eventually find your way. Because most people never truly find their true identity, because they actually give up too soon. And so, like when I first got
Mm.
started, I was trying to be like other people, trying to sound like other people, and then at the end, I wasn't being authentic. So no matter what you're doing, you have to be authentic to yourself. And we all have different styles, when it comes to talking to people, talking to clients, the way that we approach things. But if we just be authentic, because there's only uh, one of us out there. So
I love that. So you said you have 4 children. Do you have grandchildren?
yes, we have one grandchild. Her name is Charlie Ray. So she just turned 6 years old. She'll be seven coming up in April.
Wow, 7-year-old. You sound like an old man, Jimmy. That's awesome. My kids are little, so I'm just starting the journey. Got 2 and 1 on the way, so good stuff. So going from a business owner to an employee, I always say, maybe this is an identity I project on myself, that I would be a terrible employee. Now I say that because I've been a business owner so long, I wouldn't know how to be an employee anymore. Uh, Speak to that journey going from entrepreneurship to just being a part of a team and allowing yourself to just be one of many instead of being the guy.
And there's actually two ways to be in business, right? Like if you're an entrepreneur, you're obviously taking all the risk. You've got all the insurance, and you're the one that's liable if like something goes wrong, right? And then there's also an opportunity to be an entrepreneur, where you're able to work under a company umbrella and then help build it out. And then with it's the entrepreneur, there's a lot of opportunity, right? There's actually a lot of business owners out there that probably should shut their companies down and actually work for somebody else, because a lot of them are just not really good at running a business, right? Because there's so many different facets to it. And so I realized that there's a bunch of things that I didn't like about running a business, and there's actually things that I really like to enjoy doing. So when I was being coached, by Andy, and then coming out to the Elliot Army, just watching like how the team works together. How the team is very uniform. How the impact was so great. With the messaging of helping people become their best version of themselves, and going through and having a transformation myself, of having my marriage restored. Being able to lose 65 pounds to get that edge back, being able to scale. At the time, we scaled our business to 6 figures a month in commission. So we're able to build it. But I lost the passion of actually doing the day-to-day operations. And now, like I have an opportunity to be able to build a larger business inside this platform, because the reach is a lot further, right? We've got clients that are all over the globe, with the Elliot Army. So,
Yep.
sometimes you have to set your ego aside and realize, okay, what's the best opportunity to be able to create a legacy for my family, whether it's, myself and my own LLC, like running out there and taking all the risk, or if not, being able to find something that drives me, because now I feel like I'm working on purpose rather than for dollars, right? It's more about helping impact, and I feel like our greater reach right now is exactly where we're at.
So if someone's listening and they're where I was 5 years ago, where I was ready to go work for somebody else because my business didn't work. And so I was on the fence. Like, I'm either gonna figure out this business game, or I'm gonna go work for someone else who has. Because I was just tired of what I'd created, this work monster, this business with all these employees and cash flow, but there was no money at the end of it. It was just constant stress and chaos. And I actually tried out. I went and worked for somebody for one project just to see. I'm in construction, and he was in construction, and he'd offered me a pretty good salary to come work for him. And what I learned in just a couple weeks of working with him was his company was an absolute disaster. It was utter chaos. He had no systems and processes. He had ego. He was a really poor leader, blamed his team for everything. And what I came out of that experience with was like, holy smokes, nobody has this figured out. Like, I have to figure it out because there's nobody I can go work for. That's what I ran into. I'm not saying it's true, but and so I hired a coach and started building systems and all that. So if you're speaking to somebody and they're running a business, it's chaotic, it's not working for them, how would they know if they just need to go plug into a successful team and become one of many and really thrive there versus going deep and figuring out the business game?
Well, like we all need a coach, right? Like if you're actually going to be out there running a business and like never get any coaching, I mean you'll probably, that there's a high chance of like not like being as successful as you can be. We talk to business owners all the time that have so much ego and that they're not willing to be able to invest into their business or into themselves. And like, they're just floating by, never playing to their full potential. I mean, there's business owners that I'm talking that are barely making it by, but they want the ego of actually owning a business. Where like if you just invest that money into like personal development, because every time you invest in a coach, like Daniel, like he can be able to help scale and be able to see blind spots, right? Um, I mean, there's some people that just, if it's really not their passion of like accounting and inventory and like following up, if it's not really fun for them, then like I mean there's always opportunities to go out there and just do what you're good at, whether it's just being in sales, going out there and just closing deals and helping customers, like maybe just the whole organizing a whole company is not your strong suit, so.
So what would you say to that person if they're listening to this conversation and their eyes are actually open? They've never really considered closing shop and working for someone else. And maybe it was their ego and you just pushed a button. And now they're like, oh, man, you just spoke to me, Jimmy. Maybe I need to go find a team. How would you guide them to find a team that's worth plugging into and isn't what I saw that was just chaos and eventually they basically collapsed, within a year of that time frame. They just couldn't run a business.
Go out there and kind of just find a company that has just the right core values, right? The right leadership. I mean that was the biggest thing with when Andy was trying to find a company to plug into, because like after he shifted from automotive, he wanted to find the right company, and like it was impossible to find. So he actually went out and actually created it. And so like this company that he created, there were no bosses. We all kind of, we all work together as a team. We're all focused on our individual business we have inside, but we all work together, right? And there's no breaks, there's no times. Like we just show up when, and then most companies aren't like that, but to be able to find something, I mean, I would suggest, going around to like a few companies that like I would say make a list and then kind of have like a top two or three and go and just ask them questions. And you sit down and grab lunch with the owner and just ask them why they're different. Ask them about like the reason why they got started and kind of figure out like their true passion about the business, and then ask them what their plan of their growth over the next few years, their vision.
Mm. So you got me really curious on the model there at Elliot Army. I don't know anything about the model. All I know is I meet any one of you guys, and you guys are all awesome. And whenever Andy speaks on stage, he has all you guys back there behind him, which is just awesome to see. And the energy you guys bring is phenomenal. But I know there's a lot of work that goes into building the culture and attracting those people. But what's the structure like? You said that there's no bosses. How does that work?
So our goal is to be able to help solve big problems, right? So we have clients that reach out to us. So clients that reach out to us, whether there's somebody trying to get into sales And like, there's actually a lot of amateur sales people. There's actually a lot of companies that don't really have a system for their sales, and they're like, they're very reactive, right? So we have a training academy which can provide a framework for salespeople. So it gives them a cadence, it gives them, training for them to be able to practice and be able to be ready for war, right? Because the approach that we have of going into sales is making sure that we're prepared, ready, would you rather, have somebody go into war that's never shot a gun, that's never, been able to, have endurance and training, or somebody that's prepared, that shot their gun, that learns, every objection in their field, that learns how to be able to make a stranger into a friend, that learns how to be able to rebuttal every objection that comes at them. If somebody that's been trained to the highest level is a master closer. Most companies are out there just winging it. Most people are very reactive. So our goal is to be able to help someone become the best version of themselves, to be able to, be a great representative of their company, but also, being, somebody that makes themselves proud, and also, making them the superhero to their family. Because a lot of companies only rely on trying to increase revenue. But we're
Hmm.
trying to help people become the best version of themselves, by helping them to be able to, increase in their belief in themselves, because we'll never be able to out earn our self worth. So no matter
Yeah.
how much you're making, you have to continue to be able to increase your self worth to yourself, and then also be able to increase your skill sets. Because nowadays with AI and technology, you have to continue to gain more skill sets, at least 10 to 12 new skill sets per year.
10 to 12. Whoa. I'm going to write that down.
So we teach entrepreneurs, business owners, how to grow, because most business owners don't have a training platform to plug into. Most of them don't have, any training at all. There's no really set training for their employees. They bring them on board. They have a sit down with them, to be able to do the paperwork, and they just send them off, right? There's no really process to it, and a lot of people are stuck in the same revenue, right? So if we can help that employee, or that the salesperson, to be able to have some more belief in themselves, because the way you can get confidence is having to be able to have competency, to be able to learn and be able to have that skill. So like when they're facing that in the field, they're able to overcome it.
So you said something that I think is gold, and that is you can't out earn your self worth. You want to dive into that a little bit? We say focus on the businessman before the business plan. Because if you're just trying to build the systems and everything in your business, but you're not the man that can lead it and can grow it, you're going to blow it up or burn it down. So you have to become the man first. You want to dig into that?
Chase the man, not the money. That there's so many people trying to dial in their systems and the processes, and they keep on, they're a great student. They're like learning all this stuff, but they're actually the same person. They haven't changed in the past few years, right? And so if you continue to change and actually become the best version of yourself, and be disciplined when it comes to your diet, be disciplined with showing in the gym, then people will actually look at you different, because we attract who we are. So if you want better employees working for you, or clients that want to come and actually work with you, you have to be able to look like you're somebody that's a professional. There's a lot of people, which I was before 2 years ago. I was sloppy. I was undisciplined. I was, always, casually drinking, and I would never work out. I was always sleeping in, and I was better than most. I was a business owner, but I was better than most. I was like, the marriage was probably close to being, you know, we're like one huge issue away from just leaving each other, right? There was no intimacy, right? And so
Wow.
after getting like my like physical health, getting my blood work, making sure that I was dialed in, there's more energy for my clients, more energy for my teammates, for my wife. And once I fixed the home stuff, magically all the business stuff what's fixed, right? Because sometimes we're focusing on the wrong thing. We're focusing on revenue and business and putting all of our personal stuff to the side.
Do you think we do that as men because it's a lot easier to fix a business problem than a me problem? So we're chasing the easier path?
Yeah, I mean, your superpower is your wife. Your wife is your battle mate, right? If you really focus on that, because if you go to every other seminar or like leadership stuff, there's always going to be just the men. Like here with the Elliot group, when we have seminars, when we have events, it's always the wife and the husband. Because like if they're both learning together and they're both growing, and then the wife understands, what the husband is doing, and then she trusts him, kind of seeing the environment that we have. Because with all of us, we all work together, with our spouses. We all are, very close, right? Because the closer you are to your spouse, the further you'll actually go in your business, right? I mean, you're like your glass ceiling right now is because you're not close with your wife. There's bitterness. You guys are arguing. You guys are walking out the door. You guys are hiding, different things, right? But as you get closer, you'll find that you have so much more peace, and you'll have so much more potential to grow in all areas of your life. But if you're hiding things and you're not being truthful and you're not changing and you're always being resentful because she's always, feels like she's nagging you, but she's trying to help you, right? And so like if you actually, picked up, your clothes, or you actually cleaned the dishes, she probably wouldn't have to do all that. So, so like as I put my ego aside and including my wife into like my training, and started going to events with her, because it started off with just me and her coming to events together, because we saw how Andy was with his wife, because Andy's the top sales trainer in the world. And so it wasn't like the sales training that really drew us to them. It was because of how he had his wife next to him, he had his family next to him. He was talking about, being closer to God, talking about, being closer with his wife, talking about having his kids along the journey. And then once we actually fixed all that, all of a sudden the business revenue was through the roof, because there's actually a lot of business owners that have all this revenue, they have all this money, but deep down they're empty. Deep down they're unfulfilled. Deep down they're just they're about to commit suicide, right? And so if we can be able to learn from that, is like just take care of your family. If you honor yourself and your body, because there's natural chemicals that happen when you're working out. If you do all the right things, then the business, the revenue, all that will come.
Love that. That's a good word right there, Jimmy. So speak to the man who he thinks he's putting in the work, but he doesn't think his wife is. He's like, I'm showing up to the gym. I'm putting in all the work for the sales. I'm bringing in the money. My wife, she doesn't do her half. She doesn't do her part, so I can't grow together because she won't join me.
You ever sat down, and actually figured out, what your wife really wants in life? Have you sat down and really talked about, like, what her goals are? Have you talked about, asked her like what truly fulfills her? I think a lot of people don't really even know their spouse anymore. After kids to sports, and like, the kids are more important, which it should be always spouses. It always should be them, like, there's always, have to make date time priority. But, with the kids and being so busy, I see a lot of relationships kind of drift apart. And then once the kids leave the house, they actually don't even know each other. They're actually, there's nothing in common. So I would say like you have to get back and start dating again, and start like, really asking those questions, about like what you truly want in life. And just, you take the time to slow down. Sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. Sometimes we're moving so fast, trying to take care of all these check boxes, but we're actually forgetting the most important persons right next to us. There are people laying in bed each night in the same bed, but they're miles apart. Miles apart because there's no more connection. So I promise you, the enemy wants that. The enemy wants division. The enemy wants you to like not get close with your wife. The enemy doesn't want intimacy. They want confusion. So if you just do it God's way, I promise you, you'll have you'll be so much more fulfilled, be in the same page, and if you're out there reaching goals that are both both your goals, it just happens so much easier.
It's interesting that you say that because just before this, I was on a group call with my wife for one of our programs, and we break up the men and the women through this particular aspect. So this was the group of women, and most of them are married and have kids. And a common thread was that they didn't know how to dream because in the throes of kids and spouse and home, they lost themselves. And so what you're saying as for the husband is to lead in helping the wife figure out who she is and what she really wants. Because chances are she's been just grinding it out, serving you, raising your kids, and she doesn't even know what she wants.
I mean, wives are always so selfless. I mean, that's just by nature. When they have the baby, they pour everything into the new the new child, right? I mean, all of her energy. She's up early in the morning. She's up late. Just pouring everything. And like my wife and I, we were like, there's times that we'd go shopping early on. She was like, never wanted to buy anything nice, right? Because it was too much. Like, didn't want to spend money, because she's so always used to like putting that money aside and make sure the kids had money to buy shoes or, the school stuff, right? And so like the wives kind of forget to dream just because like it was because they're always trying to serve somebody else, right? So I found that during the time that, we were like always walking, part of my fitness journey, like we were doing 75 hard, so we had to do two workouts. So the second one
It's
was
hardcore.
actually a 45-minute walk that we did every single night. So we would walk, no phones. We would hold hands. We're very intentional. Very, hold hands and just talk about life. Talk about places we wanted to go. Talk about places we want to eat. Talk about our goals and dreams, and talk about places we wanted to, to fly to, and so all these different things that like, and most people are just too busy to do these days, right? And then, as we were doing this, like we just got closer, and by the time we had so much more clarity because our phones are like so distracting, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing right now is the enemy wants your attention, right? So if you don't give attention to the huge priorities in your life, like your wife and your family, time goes right by, kids grow up, they see you working all their life, and there's no relationship, right? So we got to slow down and really like see what's very important into our life, and then pour into it.
Love that. It's a good word. So I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable here, and I'm actually going to ask a question that's personal to me and the journey I'm on right now with my wife. And as I walk this journey and peel back the layers of the onions from my own journey and transformation, learning to tell myself the truth and figure out what I want in life and all these things, just exposing and exposing, I've realized that there's some things in my marriage that I don't want, okay? But here's the piece that I have not been able to figure out, and I actually haven't met anyone else that's figured it out either. And that is, how do you create the life of intimacy, connection, and abundance when you're in it with the little children? Like when your wife's in the childbearing years, and the only people I've ever talked to that figure it out, their wife isn't having kids anymore. So that whole piece of chaos and hormones and emotions is all kind of put aside. And so as I'm on this journey of how do I build this amazing connection and intimacy and fire in my marriage, we have a great relationship, but we don't have the fire and spark that I wish we had. And I don't know how to build that in this season. Like I can imagine after we're done having kids. Do you have an answer to that, of how do you build that when you're in it with all the pressure and stress and chaos of raising the children from zero?
When the kids are sleeping, I would assume, you're able to be spontaneous, or if not, maybe you plan it out. Maybe you have like, a sitter come over and then you're like planning a date. So It's about getting creative, right? It's about finding doing those little things that we used to do. Because when we used to chase after our spouses, we would do anything to get their attention. It's like we're on the phone, like you say bye, no, you say bye for like like we would do all these crazy things, and then when you're in it, you kind of forget, right? Because that newness wears off, right? And so the one thing
Hmm.
that Andy and Jackie always talk about is if you always keep it new, it'll never die out, right? So we have to always find ways to keep it fresh, to keep it new again. When's the last time you actually got flowers outside of Valentine's Day? When's the last time that you actually left like a love note, right? A love note that you wrote, you hand wrote, because you're nowadays we're so busy, but like you got to slow down and do these little things, right? It's the little things that we used to do before when we had all the time in the world and we're just crushing on our loved one, sending text messages and just doing these things that like it just meant a lot. And I guarantee those things still mean a lot, but like we just feel like it's just we've outgrown it. But if you get back to doing some of the things that we used to do, I promise you actually spark. And I guarantee if you can get her sparked, you'll figure it out. Like, you'll find a closet, you'll find like it's still there. It's just buried, and then it's just your job to you have to get that woken back up, right? Inside of her, she has it. It's just all these burdens, all these things that are like layered on top, and it's kind of our job to kind of get her out again, get her to feel like a woman again, because she's not dressed up, she's wearing her pajamas half the day, right? So, it's our job to lift them up and to make them feel sexy again.
So just going back to the fundamentals, basically, don't overcomplicate it. It's not magic. Just do the simple things you know to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's no secret sauce, right? I think we always kind of forget we want the new stuff, but like the old school stuff is what always works, right? People are probably coming to you about all these new things that are coming up for their business practice. Like, dude, let's get back to the fundamentals. What's your KPIs? What's your closing rate? What's your systems and processes? Like all these new stuff is cool, but we know the practices. We know what works, right?
Okay, so you bring up an interesting point. Again, just real and raw is what we say around here at All In. So for closing rate, okay, I'm the one that does sales in our company. That's the one role that I do and I always have done and haven't let go of yet. And I would consider myself good at sales, not because I've had particular sales training, but just because I'm authentic and I'm expert in my industry. And people seem to pick up on that. And we've done zero marketing in our company, which is not a good business model. Okay, but we've built it 100% on referrals. And so people always are coming to us and they want us to work for them. So how would someone like the Elliot Group help someone like me with sales who I close every job I want to close? I don't remember the last time I didn't get a job I didn't want.
So what happens if you're not in the mix? So like you haven't been able to learn how to actually duplicate yourself.
I've not duplicated myself in sales.
The thing like, like if you don't ever duplicate yourself, if you're out for a long period of time, I mean, how long can you actually survive without you being in the game? And so a great leader learns how to be able to actually replicate themselves and pour themselves into other people.
So when is it time to hire a salesman? What is there a revenue number or a profit number or a sales quota or anything that you would say that at this point when you're getting this many leads coming in or this is your revenue that this is when you hire a salesperson versus the owner like our small company I do the sales because it's we don't our average ticket price is around $250,000 for our services and so we don't have high lead flow. And so there wouldn't be work for a salesman if we hired a salesman right now. And so at what point is the right time to duplicate yourself in sales? I don't know the answer, so I'm genuinely asking.
Let me ask you a question. So who's your top competitor?
I do not know. I don't feel like there is a top competitor. I feel like we're in a class of our own.
Is there companies out there that are very similar to you that have large teams that are maybe more widespread throughout the country? Have they been able to learn how to scale
Good question.
or all independent like you?
Good question. I do not know. I think I don't know anyone around here that has scaled. The only people I know that scale their lower end. I don't know anyone that scaled the high end renovations, unless you go to like AFT. Actually, they're out by you guys in Scottsdale. AFT Construction, Brad Levitt and his team out there. They've built a pretty awesome team, and they do very high end custom builds and renovations. But they're still just local to that one office. But they've figured out some stuff that I don't know how to do. They're the only people that come to mind that I would say do what we do better than what we do and at scale.
So like, is there a desire for you to wanna do more?
Not on the construction side, not really. No, my desire to do more is on the coaching side and helping men find freedom and abundance in their life. So like all my goals and KPIs are all like how to help more people.
And that's it, because like, it's great to make money, right? But it's even greater to impact lives. Because if you impact
Mhm.
lives, that ripple goes so much further. So there's a lot of opportunity in your coaching business, to be able to learn how to scale, learn how to be able to build out the proper systems, learn how to have the right audiences, to be able to find you.
Mhm.
Because if you have all these systems in place and you have a great message, you have a great way to help other people. But if people don't recognize who you are, then you're not impacting as many people as you can. So we can help grow your audience. We can help you to be able to be the authority by there's different ways that we help coaches be able to do that.
Nice. So I've got a friend who he is actually struggling with sales. He's struggling with leads. He's really good at what he does. I actually traveled to his team. He does cabinet installation and sells high-end luxury cabinetry. And I spent some time with his team. His team is awesome. He's awesome. He's excellent at what he does. He's the best in his area, but he's expensive. And he's struggling right now with getting people to buy his expensive cabinet product. What would you say to somebody stuck in that spot where they really have a great product, but everyone says, we love you, we want you, but you're twice what we can afford? Do you have a way to overcome that objection?
So like, because I know that there's something with the individual that he's sending off some sort of something, right? Because if you're in the right flow state and you actually know your product and you're
Mhm.
able to have that certainty will be able to will pass on to your client, right? So there's something. So until like we're able to have a chance to meet him and be able to kind of really see, I'm not sure how his personal life is. I'm not sure how his family life, because there could be a
Yeah.
bottleneck somewhere in there that we can't see in front, but like but people can feel it, right? It's like my dog knows who has bad energy. I know like my dog is like, okay, this person will come up with this person. There's something wrong. There's an aura. We all have a frequency, right? So whether we are gravitating towards the top of the frequency, which is the power, which is enlightenment, joy, peace, or there's actually a lot of people working out of the bottom zones because they're stressed, they're working out of greed, they're trying to close a sale, they're very desperate, and then people feel that, right? So it's your aura, and there's a lot of deeper things that really transcribe during a sale, right? So it's not just memorizing the scripts and knowing exactly the word tracks. I mean, it's how that person's treating their wife at home. It's how that person's feeling about themselves, right? So I can't really say why like somebody's not wanting to buy because I guarantee
Yeah.
somebody else that maybe might be less skilled, but maybe has a better relationship to themselves or their family. Maybe they're just bringing the whole different level of aura, right?
Yeah. I say that sales is an energy transaction. We always think of it as a financial transaction, but if you can break free of that mindset, just like this is an energy transaction, then you realize how much your energy matters because you're essentially selling your energy.
The best product in the world, I mean, like, it could be like the best service in the world, but if you're like bringing the wrong energy or like your poopy pants or something is wrong, people they sense that right away.
Should I send him your way? Should I get him in touch with you?
Guarantee anybody that's stuck, anybody that needs a breakthrough, and they're like working on the wrong things. Like if you're trying to chase the sunset, you're going the other way. No matter how hard you're working, you're actually, you're learning the wrong things, right? Your focus is on the wrong things. So like there's people that are working really hard to make their money, but they're like working on the wrong things, right? So if we can help you increase your skill sets, your belief, teach you how to be able to create your brand online, teach you how to be able to create influence, teach you to be a superhero to your kids, teach you to get closer to your wife. The rest of the stuff comes so easy.
I love that. It sounds like you guys have very similar ideations that we have and belief systems that we have. That's awesome. That was my biggest thing for sales. And I bet you, as an employee, make more money than I do. We do pretty good in construction, but you're pretty badass. So, for me, the biggest hang up was my self worth. And essentially, no one's going to pay me more than I think I'm worth. And so I can't sell myself beyond that. And so once I broke through, and for me, it was actually Garrett White, which he spoke, at the event that we were just at. He was the one who was able to wake me up. and when I shifted internally and started loving myself and showing up in a way that was consistent and disciplined, and that made it so that I loved who I saw in the mirror, because I didn't have to hide, business like tripled the next year. Like that part became easy because my energy shifted, because how I thought about myself shifted. And so the core of everything we say starts with identity. Like, who do you think you are? Who do you believe yourself to be? Because you're going to operate out of that day in and day out. And so if you want to change your behavior, but you don't change who you are, you're going to just fall back into who you believe yourself to be.
We all need somebody to be actually to believe in us before we actually believe in to ourselves, right? So we have to find that coach. I mean, there's somebody out there that can help you. You have to drop the ego aside and be able to reach out for help. And then I promise you, these guys have all gone through the same thing. So when you start opening up, you start realizing that you're more like everybody else. And like those that are successful, they all have the same pain, but they've been through the fire before you. So now they're able to look back and be able to help you, right? Because when you have a good mentor, you're paying for speed. You're actually collapsing time frames. So you're taking the fire they've been through and you're actually learning what not to do. It allows you to be able to have more success. But some people don't want to, let go of their money because they're not wanting to invest in themselves. But if they understood that anytime you actually invest in yourself, it's always 1,000% ROI. Anytime I bought a ticket, one of my last dollars I was hanging on to, I let it go, and like I just got way more return through like connections, through the skills that I learned, through the belief in myself. All of a sudden, like something clicked, and all of a sudden, that $1 million idea helped me to be able to go and take action.
That's awesome. Thank you for being on today. I want to wrap up with a couple things. One is that we have a closing tradition where we ask a question from the last guest, not knowing who there's going to be on the podcast. So I'll ask that here in a little bit. But before that, what is one thing you would say to the audience if they're struggling just in general in life, they're not happy with who they are? What is one thing you would say that they can go do across the board? They can go right now, today, in their life, wherever they're at, they can do that one thing to improve the trajectory, even if it's just a few degrees.
If you're in life, the one thing that changed everything with me was having Christ in my life. Reach out and attend, find a church, just get out there and just you have to have Christ in your life. Before I built like a crazy business, and it wasn't on a foundation, with Jesus Christ, and everything crumbled. I was spending the money, the wrong things. I was doing the wrong things. I was drinking, going to places where I shouldn't be, being around other people I shouldn't be. And then when all the money was gone, those guys were gone. But now, like, having the right foundation, having the right core values, having the right people around me is everything. So that's completely changed my life. And That's the one tip that all of us, need to be able to hear that.
I love that. So the question that the last guest left is, has your children ever done anything sleepwalking that's story worthy?
So Cassidy used to, so like her sisters would actually watch these scary movies. And so like she had this like long hair and like this long like kind of a little gown that she would sleep, and then she put her hair down in the front, so it looks like that one scary movie with that girl. She'd come downstairs and actually scare her sisters. So it was crazy.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to the All In Podcast. Jimmy, thank you so much for coming on. It means the world to take your time and pour into whoever's listening to this and possibly change their life and help them on their journey of growth in any area. So we're going to link all of your stuff down below of where they can find you and what you guys do at the Andy Elliot and the Elliot Army. And I met a handful of them, and I highly recommend you guys go check them out. So Jimmy is awesome, and really the whole team, you meet any of them, they're all awesome people, and they're committed. I know it looks really salesy. Of course it does. They're salesmen. But if you can get past that and just look at who the people are, they're very genuine people and the kind of people that you want to link arms with. So highly recommend it. Jimmy, thanks so much for being on. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the All In Podcast. As always, anything we talked about, all the links are down below if you want to follow up with us. And if you could do us a massive favor, and wherever you're listening or watching this podcast, give us a thumbs up and leave us a 5-star review. And then share this episode with somebody who you think might get value from it. Until next time, go all in.